Forum among the candidates for Councillor at Large in Quincy. This evening's forum is sponsored by Quincy Asian Resources, South Cove Community Health Center, Boston Chinatown Neighborhood Center, the Chinese Progressive Association, the Asian Community Development Corporation, and the Patriot Ledger. I'm Shazi Dewalaby, editor of the Patriot Ledger, and I will be moderating the forum and asking candidate questions which have been solicited from residents by the event sponsors. Before we get to those questions, the candidates will have 60 seconds each to present their backgrounds and tell you why they are running for office. And there is a timekeeper sitting right in front of you folks, if you haven't noticed. I don't want to be rude, but I will cut you off if you go past your time. We've seated you in alphabetical order, and Mr. DeBona, you may go first. Any mic, you're going to share the mics, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit slower for the translation as I usually talk. I want to thank everyone for having this event tonight, for hosting it here at North Quincy High School. My name is Noel DeBona. I'm running for Councillor at Large. I'm asking for one of your 3 votes. This is my hometown of Quincy, Massachusetts. I grew up here and I'm raising a family. I have 2 young boys, Tyler and Aiden, and my wife Neve, and we live in the Marymount section of Quincy. I grew up in the Quincy Point section and educated through the Quincy Public Schools and Quincy High School graduate of 1993. I furthered my education at the University of Massachusetts at Boston. And just a little bit about myself real quick, and I only got a couple of seconds here, that I come from an immigrant family. My mother is Asian. She's actually Thai, and we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight in this candidates night. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeBona. Mr. Finn.
Good evening. You know, if we're honest, we have to admit there's probably things that separate us culturally, ethnically, but we gather here this evening not for what separates us, but what brings us together. The right to be safe in our homes with equal protection under the law. The opportunity to educate our children so they might have a better life than us. The ability to work and have the full enjoyment of our lives in liberty and peace. And also the right for all of us to participate in free and democratic elections. That is what government is for. And in my 14 years as a city councilor, those have been the things that I've advocated for. These are the things I have represented. If you give me the honor of returning me to office, I will hold to that same. I ask humbly for one of your 3 votes on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Finn. Ms. Lang.
大家好，我名係梁思晴。我哋愛嘅係 John Brothers、David Zhao and Shazi Dewalaby， 出嚟攞埋晒組織今晚嘅辯論會。我哋愛嘅係我揸成台公群嘅戲專人，最 important 啦，我哋愛嘅係呢，出嚟花啲時間出嚟同我傾。My name is Nina Lang, and I'm excited to be your next city councilor at large. Quincy is my home. I was born in Germantown, raised in North Quincy. Went to Sacred Heart School, and I work here today with my cousin Jimmy Lang. Quincy's meant a lot for me and for my family. When they immigrated here from Hoisan, this is where we've gotten our start. It's allowed our amazing opportunities, and it's made me the confident, successful woman I am today. I want families across all of Quincy to have these same opportunities. I'm excited looking out and seeing everyone in the community coming out and seeing how far we've all come. I look out and I see a community that wants to be engaged and wants to be part of the political process. I look forward to answering your questions tonight.
Thanks, Ms. Lang. Thank you. Mr. McCarthy, if I can just tell the audience, your applause, and I'm glad you're enthusiastic, will take away from the time we have to listen to the candidates' answers. So if you want to hold your applause to the very end and then knock yourselves out, that would be great. Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you, Shazzy. And first of all, I'd like to thank the organizations for putting this together tonight. The candidate nights are always beneficial to the community. My name is Dave McCarthy, and I've currently been on the school committee for the last 12 years, which is 3 terms. Married to my wife Roseanne for 30 years, and I have 8 children that have gone through the Quincy Public Schools. I've chaired almost every committee on the school committee, pretty much gearing in on facilities committee and budget committee as the 2 committees that I enjoy the most. I'm a former park and recreation board member. I sit on the board of trustees for the Carroll Center for the Blind and the board of directors for South Shore Mental Health. I've made the choice to leave the school committee. I think that's my time to move to the city council. I think it'd be very beneficial for me, as I've kept my eye on the ball on the school committee for 100% of the time, but at the same time, watch a lot of activity going on in Quincy that has to be looked at. So I humbly ask for one of your votes on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. Mr. McFarland.
Good evening. I'd like to thank everyone involved this evening for making this evening possible. My name is Mike McFarland. I'm a lifelong Quincy resident. I grew up on North Central Ave. My wife and I settled with our 3 children on Summit Avenue in Wallaston. And my children are all products of the Quincy Public Schools. I went to Wallaston School, as did my 3 children, and they received a fine education here. Quincy for years has been a city of immigrants, and working together with the different groups in the city of Quincy has always brought Quincy together in a very cohesive way. When the tea came to Quincy in the 1970s, there was a major influx of people of Asian descent that came to the city of Quincy because the MBTA made the transportation so easy. We've been working together with people like Betty Yao and Lieutenant Tom Casey, Ian McLaughlin, Arthur Keogh. These are people who've got to...
Thank you, Mr. McFarland. And I would ask each one of you, please speak into the mic so that none of your important words are lost. Now I'll pose a question to each candidate, and each one will have the opportunity to answer the same question so you can compare them. Each one may answer the question in 90 seconds or less, and that's my challenge to you, the or less part of it. Mr. DeBona, I will pose the first round start to you. Development of hundreds of apartments and condominiums are planned for Quincy, but very few of them include affordable housing. The Metropolitan Area Planning Commission has reported that nearly 43% of city households are cost burdened, which means they are paying more than they can afford toward housing. What would you do to increase affordable housing options in the city?
That's a great question. You know, I've been attending all these housing forums that Sean Glenning has been doing, and we're under that threshold of 10% right now. We're at about 9.6. We're about 140 units below that mark right now. So with the downtown development happening, the apartments and the condominiums being built in this city, the overabundance of apartments and dwellings, we have to keep that threshold at that 10% mark. So for every 10 that we build, one of them has to go to affordable housing. That doesn't necessarily mean Section 8. That necessarily means people that are graduating college, like many of you people, many of you in this audience tonight, that are getting out of the college experience and getting into the real world. That's also an alternative affordable housing. What am I going to do about this? Be a liaison, be involved, and I have been involved, going to these different discussions, going to these different meetings, talking with Sean Glennon on a monthly basis and finding out where our threshold is and where we're at. Being that voice for you, even though I'm on the school committee, I'm still out there in the city helping to better it because I care about this city. That's why I'm running here. That's why I'm running for this councillor at large seat. There's so much going on in the city today, and it's so vital that I participate and help this city now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Finn.
I actually was critical in developing the Affordable Housing Trust in Quincy. And I think one of the things that we have to do practically that we are doing, in fact, there's an order before the council now, is to go back and amend for the downtown development zone to require that they comply with the inclusionary zoning ordinance. Councillor Palmucci has filed that, and I strongly encourage you to call your councillors and encourage them to support that as well. I think with the Affordable Housing Trust, with that development, we have the opportunity to create additional units. And I think we've had in the past a in lieu of fund that helps us develop additional housing. In fact, 30 units of affordable housing were built in the Fort Street project, which I believe was the Chinatown Development Corporation had actually done that. I think, though, for the time being, one of the things that we really need to focus on is the development of on-site units with some of these projects, because they will come more immediately online and be more available for people who can then finally afford to live and stay in the city of Quincy.
Thank you. Ms. Lang.
Thank you for that question. So, as we all know, the development is happening in our city with or without us. As a councillor at large, I appreciate that with the new developments coming in, that we are keeping in mind affordable housing. But going door to door and speaking to residents in our city, whether you're a new couple moving in or you've been here 30 to 50 years, the biggest problem isn't affordable housing for people coming into our city. The biggest problem is for residents that have been here a long time to be able to afford to stay in this city. That's the issue that I'd like to address as an at-large councillor. I want to work with the state and federal delegations to see what we can do to bring in other funding to our city so that it doesn't keep coming out of our pockets. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCarthy. Yes, please.
As Councillor Finn talked a little bit about the Affordable Housing Trust that was set up, it's one of the items that has come up in conversation at various senior visits that have been out to at some of our locations in regards to housing, along with some of our private housing locations. And it's a concern not only to those folks to look for a better place possibly to live, to possibly move downtown. As Councillor Finn also said, it should become part of that downtown redevelopment chemistry that gets put in place here as we go for our second round on the downtown. But also residents out that I've been talking to, knocking doors, are also concerned when they leave their homes, what are their options? Where do they go? 1000 Southern Artery? Do they go to Clay Street? Do they go Pagnano Towers? Where can they go? And it's a big question. And it's got to be put into the mix so that these folks have a nice place to go. There's some housing here in Quincy that really needs to get a good look at and a refurbish. I hate to say, when I go out and visit, it concerns me a little, some of the housing authority locations that we have. So I'd be a big proponent of putting something that's affordable, downtown, and in good shape for people to live in.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. Mr. McFarland.
Housing is a function of your income and what you can afford. It also is a function of people who want to own their own home, interest rates, and their wages. In Quincy, we have no shortage of people trying to get in here, to live in the city of Quincy. Through the Affordable Housing Trust, we have put on new units in the last number of years, and we have continued to put on new units or take money in lieu of units. And if we did not take the money in lieu of units in some of these developments, we would not have been able to produce the veterans housing for returning low-income veterans who fought for us so well in the war. What we need to do is we need to get with the Housing Authority, with our state and federal representatives, and try to leverage as much tax dollars from the federal and state as we can to put with city sources and also from the Affordable Housing Trust to produce more affordable units in the city of Quincy. But right now, there's very few apartments, if any, available in the city of Quincy, and everything coming online seems to be filling up very, very fast.
Thank you all for your answers. We're going to move on to education, which is a topic that affects a broad base of residents and is a particular concern of the Asian community. Do you have any thoughts on how the City Council could improve our pre-K through 12 system, and in particular, What will you do to increase the availability of low-cost, high-quality preschool programs and after-school programs? Mr. Finn, would you answer this first, please?
Yes, and thank you, and of course, that's a very critical question. I think it's important to understand the jurisdictional component in relation to the City Council, that ultimately we have one role in terms of the school and education budget, and that is we can cut the bottom line. We cannot add any additional resources to it. That really falls within the jurisdiction of our school committee to focus and to advocate specifically and design those very specific types of programs. Obviously, as a city councilor, as it comes before us on the budget, the key thing that we can do from our bully pulpit or from our ability to advocate for things is to support those particular efforts that they would want to move forward. I think we can also, again, it's been mentioned before in terms of working with our state delegation, is ensuring that the appropriate state resources are coming forward, particularly as it relates to pre-kindergarten. That's another important function that we can play from our advocacy side and in terms of supporting resolutions. I just really want to be clear that there's a difference between what falls within our jurisdiction in terms of the practical things that we can do and the other things that we can actually advocate for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lang, please.
So when it comes to our school system, I've actually, in working with my cousin's restaurant group, been the beneficiary of some really great programs that are outside of the classroom. One of which is the Quincy High School Culinary Program. We actually met a student that was participating in that program at a QCAP event where we were doing sushi on site. We've since employed her. She's our host, assistant manager, and this past summer spent 3 months as our first Caucasian girl under the age of 18 interning behind the sushi bar. She's developed skills that she wouldn't have otherwise developed in the classroom. As a city councilor, I understand sometimes we may be limited on what we can do and what we can't do, but I'm confident that together as a community, we can do outreach to local businesses and to local organizations to let them know that these schools have these programs outside of the classroom and engage them to partake the students and say, you can come in outside of the classroom and really engage your skills here. So that's what I would like to do to promote the programs that the schools are already moving forward and doing.
Thank you. Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you, Chelsea. In regards to the schools, being on the school committee for the last 12 years, I've seen some great growth and some positive signs here in Quincy, all across the levels of curriculum. In speaking about pre-K to 12, starting down at the pre-K level, we implemented full-day kindergarten a few years back under the Phelan administration, and it was something that we were able to build into the budget. That's a fee that would have been, it wouldn't have been a fee, it would have been a tuition to folks to pay probably close to $3,000 in tuition to have their kids go to full-day kindergarten in Quincy, and we built it into the program. In regards to growing it throughout all the levels, elementary, middle, and high school, we'd have to look for more help from the state. State grants would also look, as Nina mentioned, her restaurant connection, look at partners that we have out there. We have over 100 partners, business partners out there that help us work as a community. They help us work our kids into their system, and it's just a privilege to have that in Quincy. Also, as Councilor Finn stated, there's reality also. There's a bottom line budget that you have, and you have to make sure you cover everything. So we keep working at that pre-K level because it's very important. We've seen the results with full-day kindergarten as we moved it from half-day to full-day, and what the children can do now when they get to second or third grade. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. Mr. McFarland, please.
Thank you. As far as the budget dollars go for the Quincy Public Schools, we receive a certain amount of money from state aid, and all the rest comes from the local taxpayers in Quincy. With the addition of full-day kindergarten in the last several years, that gave tremendous opportunities to the young people in the city of Quincy and for parents, working parents, to be able to have their child in school all day. The pre-K programs, All they have done in the last years is cut back on federal dollars. The federal government used to send us a lot of money for education. We're not getting that anymore.